But wrongful conviction can ruin a life, and that's why many states offer compensation to those who were in prison for a crime they did not commit. But according to the Innocence Project, Massachusetts has among the toughest standards for people to get that money. In fact, a recent report found that since the law allowing compensation was passed in 2004, only 27 people have gotten any payment at all. Among them is lawyer Johnson, who was sentenced to death back in 1972 for a murder he maintained he didn't commit. He was ultimately set free with nothing more than $20 in his pocket after a witness came forward saying it was the man who accused Johnson who actually committed the crime. Police had originally declined to interview that witness because she was 10 years old at the time. In the end, after more than 10 years in prison, Johnson got just $275,000 from the state. Lawyer Johnson joins me now. Lawyer, it's good to see you again. Along with Jennifer McKim, senior investigative reporter at the investigative news site The Eye, in conjunction with BU and WGBH News, wrote the great report on this compensation law, along with several reporters from the Globe. Jennifer, it's good to see you, too. You write in the story about a guy who was convicted of raping an 11-year-old, others convicted of murder. Who's eligible and who's not for compensation under Massachusetts state law?
So that's the struggle, is how hard it is to meet the bar to be compensated under this law. Basically, you have to become eligible, you have to have been released or have had your case overturned for something that tends to prove your innocence, and then you have to prove it in a court of law.
Affirmatively. And if you pled guilty, which many people do, even if they're not guilty, to avoid the prospect of a longer sentence, you're automatically disqualified from seeking compensation at all.
Correct.
And it is true that our law is tougher. For example, I read even Texas today. Texas has no cap on compensation, unlike Massachusetts, which has $500,000.
So there's two different things. One, tougher to actually meet that eligibility requirement, and two, how much money you get. There's some states, I mean, we're sort of in the middle in terms of money. For example, in New Hampshire, it's $20,000 altogether, and in New York, there's no limit whatsoever. So we're sort of, all these different states are doing it differently.
Lawyer, 10 years in jail, including some time on death row. As I said, the last person sentenced to death before the penalty was abolished in the state. This is almost an embarrassing question. What was 10 years like, being accused of a murder you didn't commit, including thinking you might be executed?
It was horrible, you know. I couldn't face reality, like, you know, I was wondering how did I get in this predicament all of a sudden, you know.
Do you say to yourself some days, I'm never going to get out of here, I'm going to die or be executed for something I didn't do?
Well, yes, many times. But at the same time, I had a ray of hope, as if I was in denial of the actual situation that I was in, like, you know. I had a little faith, but, you know, I'm glad that the little girl came through, you know.
And we should say, I want to reiterate again, that little girl was 10 years old.
She was 10 years old.
She was a witness. The prosecution knew she existed, and she had identified the man who testified against you as the actual killer. Yes. And you never heard about this for years and years and years until she was a 20-year-old, and she came forward on her own, correct?
Yes, yes. The district attorney tried to say that I knew her when she was young. I didn't know her at all in terms of, like, you know, knowing about her, you know. All I knew that, my mother gave me a call on the phone saying that there's no evidence that would, like, help, you know, free you from the predicament that I was in, like, you know. But anyway, she contacted my lawyer, and my lawyer had a hearing. And during the hearing, the judge said, your testimony is more consistent than a Commonwealth witness, and therefore I ordered a new trial, you know, on behalf of Lloyd Johnson.
You got $275,000. You don't think it's close to enough, correct?
No, it should have been $500,000. That was
Would that have been enough for 10 years of your life where you thought you might be executed for something you didn't do?
No, no. There's no, I can't think of no amount, you know, that can really bring back, you know, my life in terms of before I was sentenced to die. You know,
what's your life been like since you got out?
What's hurting me the most, man, is like a sense of denial on behalf of the district attorney, or to some extent, the attorney general, you know. First of all, they have, like, immunity, okay? And by the mere fact that they have immunity, right, that somewhat, if not to a large extent, keeps them in denial, okay? Keeps them from not addressing the cap, which is $500,000, or making them say, well, I'm going to just avoid following the spirit of the law
and not having people go through hurdles. And
Right, okay.
And you've been campaigning, I should say, aggressively for people to change this law. Pat Jalen is the state senator from Somerville who filed the original bill that became law in 2004, which was something, but I think most of us agree not enough. She's now talking in part because of your investigation, in part because of situations like lawyers, about amending this thing to make it easier, to raise the cap, to what?
So I think it's important, first of all, to say that Pat Jalen partly passed the law because of lawyer Johnson's particular case, because she was sort of so horrified that he was getting nothing for the amount of time he spent. And she said that basically they should pass this law because the state has a moral debt to people that they wrongfully convict. So we did contact her this summer. She's been hearing from more people who are now filing for their clients, and they're just struggling to get this money. Now, a lawyer will say it took him 2 years after the law was passed to get the money, and he could not stand waiting any longer and sort of having to go over it and over again. And we've spoken to several other people who are going through that process. The story we wrote in the Globe was about a man who's trying now to get money, and he's just having to go over and over it again. So the senator, as you asked, is working to try to make it. She's looking at ways to fix the law at this
Would your
point.
life be better today if you felt that you were adequate, despite what was done to you, if you felt that the state had adequately compensated you for what they perpetrated against you, lawyer?
Put it this way, I wouldn't be more like or held hostage with my life, okay? I'm still waiting for them to, first of all, admit that they made a grave injustice, and just to acknowledge the fact that, they are not God, and it don't hurt to acknowledge, man, that, you made a mistake, But by the mere fact of saying that I'm guilty, at one time he said that my mother told Danielle's mother to say that
was the young woman.
The young woman, right? To say that Kenneth Myers did it,
Myers is the guy who accused
right.
you.
Yes.
Well, can I tell you, one, I hope you get what you deserve, and secondly, I congratulate you on continuing this campaign, and I wish you luck in it, lawyer.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's
in spite of it taking me 25 years to get the bill passed, because I was actively involved for 25 consistent years, in spite of my flaws, But when it finally came through, I was short played, I was undermined by a district attorney, and that's wrong.
A lot of people are depending on you. Thank you, lawyer, for your work. Jennifer, thank you for yours, too. I really appreciate it.